Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another Create a Sim for the Disney Save. Today, we are making the characters for the Horn King Castle household. This is mostly, well, it's all Black Cauldron characters, but they're going to be split into two separate main households. If you are expecting the main character from the Black Cauldron today, Terran, in today's video, he's actually going to be coming a little bit later and living in a separate household. This video is just directly the castle household members that live with Horn King, and we are starting out first and foremost with him. He was already in the Disney save before, and he needed a major update. If I am so honest, it's always been a really tough recreation for Horn King, and back when I made him, I really just did the best that I could at the time. Since then, we have received a few additional items that might help a little bit to update him and make him look a little bit closer to the movie. However, there is a really big complication that arose with making Horn King that a lot of you are immediately going to clock. So when we got Enchanted by Nature, they finally have given us the ability to add head accessories to characters, which is great, and I love it. And I encourage the Sims to give us endless head accessories. It's an awesome category. We already have a couple of hair pieces and some antlers, which was super cool. The second I saw the antlers, they just screamed Horn King. They are almost identical to the ones that he wears in the movie. And I saw them and I knew he was going to be candidate number one for these brand new antlers. They are perfect for him. However, in the back of my mind, I did think to myself, what are the odds that I can give him a hat and a head accessory at the same time, considering that it's very likely they use the same exact slot typing in The Sims? And sure enough, you can't. So Sims can only have either a hat or a head accessory. And that is a problem because he looks really funny with just the antlers on and bald. But the antlers are technically a little bit more of an accurate and identifying feature of the character. So if you wanted the antlers, I could totally see why that would be like the thing that you wanted to pick. But when I was putting them on him, they just looked so funny because you have to take the hood off of him. And the hood, in my opinion, helps him resemble himself a lot more because it obscures parts of his face and the back of his neck. And you don't have to worry about the bald situation because regardless of if he has hair or doesn't, you really can't see it anyway because of this hood. So it helps to really make him look like the character. And so ultimately, I think he looks a little bit better if you do the hood and do that choice. But because I knew people were really going to want the antlers, I did give him the secondary outfit choice option of him with the antlers, but he'll just be bald. So you can choose it if you would like to. By default, he's going to come with the hood here. I did update his clothing. He is wearing a brand new Star Wars outfit. It's unfortunate that I have to resort to Star Wars so often, especially amongst my Disney villains characters, but we don't have a lot of packs that go in the direction that that pack specifically allows. The clothing options for the Star Wars pack come in not super bright colors. So where I need Horn King to be wearing red, I can't have him wearing like a bright red apple colored skirt. And it also is a pack that offers a lot of layers, and the clothing options look more fantasy leaning. Also, something that's very common with Disney characters for some reason is a depiction of like some kind of additional fabric being wrapped around the neck, whether this is a cape or layered clothing or a scarf of some kind. It's very common for characters to have like an additional layer of fabric, particularly around the shoulders and the neck area. And there is that one particular shirt option that I do like to use when I'm trying to pull off something that needs that layering and does need that additional area that has the bulkiness around the neck and the shoulder area. And it's unfortunate because I lean into it often enough that I'm starting to get to the point where I avoid it because I don't want to overuse the item. But I do make a little bit of an exception depending on how often will the characters that also wear that clothing piece interact with this one, most likely, and is there nothing else that I can possibly use? And for a character like Horn King, where he really needs to be almost like a decaying human being, almost skeleton like, hidden, dingy, a little dirty, and also leaning in that fantasy direction, and we don't have a medieval pack, it's one of the only packs that I can pull from, because even with Enchanted by Nature, which I was hoping would be some pieces in there that I could potentially use, considering that the antlers would work really well for him, a lot of that clothing is very bright and sparkly and colorful and just not very fitting for such a deep, dark character as Horn King. So I decided that he needed to have this Star Wars outfit that I have used a version of with Hades as well. But now that Hades does not live in his household anymore, it's not as bad of a repetition because these two characters will not be interacting. And I did give him a brand new face tattoo. I wanted to work his nose to be a little bit more of like an empty, missing nose, skeleton slot like hole in his face. When I first made Horn King, I believe that I really truly thought he was a skeleton. And after re-watching the Black Cauldron, he still definitely could be, but I actually think he's probably a human being that has either lived for so long or is using some kind of magic to stay alive as long as possible, or maybe he uses a lot of dark magic and so it's kind of like taken a toll on his body. He looks like this graying, yellowy, orangey kind of decaying human being. He has some features to him, especially in his hands, that kind of indicate that he might still be a human, but he doesn't have a nose. And I've always had a bit of an issue when I make characters like him, where I need him to have a missing nose. And it does come up from time to time with various Disney characters. So I figured with the new tattoo feature, and I haven't really featured this in like any of my new characters because I've been doing renovations since we got the Sims 4 businesses and hobbies that added that, I would try and give it a go. You can see it took a little while to get there. I had to rework the shape of the hole in his face a few times, and it's not the most like perfectly convincing thing, but from a distance, it definitely looks really good. And even up close, you can tell what I was going for. So rather than just not being able to do anything and letting him have the nose, it is a good solution. And I also used some of the tattoo features to deepen some of the crevices of his face and darken some of that as well, so that he looks a little bit more worn in and skeleton-like. And ultimately, I think he comes out a lot better than his previous version. He's sporting some brand new, really weird, bright red eyes. I was so excited when it was shown that with Enchanted by Nature, we were going to be getting the ability to put any of the occult ears, features, eyes, all of those special features that are hidden inside of the occults onto regular Sims. Previously, if you made a spellcaster, there were certain eye types that were only available to spellcasters. There were certain eye types that were only available to aliens. And I have been saying since the beginning of time that they needed to get rid of this feature and allow full creativity and give access to everything that's available in Create-A-Sim so that you can make any type of character look like anything you want to. And because I make so many characters that are Disney and they lean in magical directions, but you don't want them to be like a full occult. So maybe I want some features that are more alien-like, but I would never want to make Horn King an alien. This is a really, really great thing that they've added in, and I applaud it a million times over. I was very concerned that they were going to be taking it out, but it has been in the game for months now, so we can hopefully, safe to say, expect to be keeping it. Moving on to Creeper, the sim that almost never was. I was never going to attempt this character because I hate him. I hate the way he looks. I hate his character in the movie. And whenever a Disney film depicts those tiny gremlin side characters, I am always looking for a bit of an excuse not to make them, if I'm honest with you. I think that because I can never make them the correct height, I personally struggle with recreating them because I think that no matter how accurately I do their face and their clothing, they never look quite right because they're not like these little goblin creatures next to the characters that they're supposed to be paired up with. And Creeper is just the exact type of issue where this problem arises. But I decided I'll go ahead and try it, see how it goes. And he turned out really great. His face is spot on. He looks just like Creeper. You can see that I was toying with different hats for him for a while because we actually have a hat that's very, very accurate to his that comes with life and death. And since he is living in Ravenwood in the life and death world, the more that I can use the life and death pack on the characters that are going to be living in this world, the better. And so I totally lean into that, and I would love to be able to use that hat because it's spot on, but it takes his ears away. And this is always the problem. There's always a catch-22 when it comes to doing things in The Sims. You have give and take, and you have to decide what's more important. And for Creeper, having his big goblin pointy elven ears have to be there, or he doesn't resemble himself at all. He could be literally anybody. So I do end up opting, sadly, for a different hat. And he is also wearing some variations of Star Wars clothing. He and a lot of the characters in this household should have been wearing a long dress tunic that is cinched at the waist with a belt or a rope of some kind. And anything in variation of that would have been like a layered dress that's a little bit more built for the male or masculine form of the game, especially if it layered really well with that hood that I did put Horn King in from Star Wars, because Creeper also wears something sort of similar with that hood, but his ears are sticking out. That's sort of what I was going for. So having to utilize Star Wars yet again, I'm okay with it. He's actually wearing a different shirt than most of, if not any of the other characters in the Disney Save ever have worn that shirt. But yeah, I would have liked to have put him in the correct hat that I wanted to put him in. He is not a magical sim. He is simply just green. It would be an interesting occult for the Sims to go into, one that would be completely unexpected. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't actually know, but has The Sims 3 or did any of the other Sims games ever have elves or goblins or gnomes or anything in that direction? Because if they're going to keep going with The Sims 4 and releasing expansion packs, every year or two, we tend to get a new occult. And now that we have fairies, we are running out of the classic ones that you could expect for them to do. There are ones that I personally wish they would do. And I think that if I had to guess, they're probably going to go for something like potentially zombies is like my guess. I don't really know how I feel about that. And I think a lot of people would be really upset. I never really care, no matter what occults we get, because it's always going to be useful to me. Occult packs end up being some of my most favored packs in terms of items and clothing. And for the fantasy element that Disney presents, they are always super helpful. The little skin details, the weird things that those packs come with, they are always a blessing for me. So I don't really care what the next occult is, but it would be cool if it was something leaning in the direction of elves. And I could see that being something that a lot of people would really enjoy, although I don't expect them to go that way. Something that I personally would love, genies. Again, I don't really think that they will do that. In fact, I would go so far as to say I would put money on the fact that they will never do genies for a few reasons, but that would be one that I would absolutely love. I mean, there's only really one character, maybe two, inside of Disney where that would be specifically helpful, but it would be a really, really fun, different occult to play with. And the items that would come with that pack, I would be going back and updating Aladdin stuff all day long. You guys know it. And I love that movie so much. So I would be happy to do so. This household needed a few filler henchmen characters. Now, these guys that I've created, I am actually looking at references from the film. There are a couple of different times where Horn King's henchmen are shown. A few of them chase Taryn and Eilonwy through the castle. There are a couple that live in the dungeon areas where Taryn is kept. And there has been a game that Disney released called Lorcana, which is a card game. And they create character cards of so many random characters and characters that you would never remember from Disney media. They're hitting like pretty much everything all over the place across the board. So whenever I am Googling those odd Disney characters, I'm now getting Lorcana cards as options and references. And that is kind of cool, to be honest with you, because it's like real Disney art that they have sort of put their stamp of approval on, no matter who the actual artist is that created the artwork. Disney still has to say, yep, it looks like the character and we approve of this, and it is being referenced from this film. This is what we want to be portrayed as coming from this movie. So if you don't have really, really high quality references or screenshots of the Henchmen characters and they're not easily readily available, there are Lorcana cards. And so I had a couple of those that I found and I went ahead and used as reference. Both of those main two that I created, the first one in red and the second one in purple, that I haven't named yet. So they're just Henchman number 1 and Henchman number 2. They are supposed to both be wearing longer tunic dresses that we just don't have. And I spent a lot of time behind the scenes trying to piece together various shirts and skirt options. And you can remove the masculine tag in The Sims 4 and it will bring up all of the skirt options and like piece some different things together. And sometimes that does work out. And I did it back when I made my Greek gods and things like that, for example. So it can occasionally work out. But nothing I was putting these guys in looked even close. It didn't look good at all. And then I finally stumbled across the Life and Death tunic shirt, and it was similar-ish, other than it wasn't a dress. So I figured, again, because it's a Life and Death item, go ahead and use it in a couple of different color options, and that'll have to be what it is for now until we hopefully get something in the future. The next one up is actually Henchman number 3. But this one is a little bit more specific. He is the one that has the guard dog that you see down in the dungeon with Taryn. And he is the one that is shown a little bit more specifically. He's not as generic. Not that he's given a name or anything like that, but it was easier to find specific references for this character. And honestly, I think that there's a potential that he might be the castle executioner, because he is dressed in very specific clothing that makes or screams executioner, in my opinion. So I did dress him differently than the other henchmen, and I tried to make him look a little bit more resemblant of that type of a theme without going too hard with it, because obviously that's very dark and that's a very dark theme. And there's nothing particularly in the film to indicate that that is 100% true, but he is dressed that way. And there is a classic idea that you would think of when you think of an executioner and what they wear. And he has pretty much identical clothing to that. So even though he's with the guard dog, I don't know, maybe that's his second job. And so I figured I would just dress him a little bit differently. He's actually wearing a very specific, like, weird button-up shirt with a apron over the top of it with a little bit of a mess on the apron. And that item comes from the new Golden Years kit. It's not new, but it is new because everything with the Sims 4 kits is new, considering at the rate that they pump those things out, they always feel like the new kit. So excuse me, because I say new all the time and it really isn't, but it always feels like it. That kit is a bit of an odd gem because it's old people clothing, but it's specific old people clothing. And so it's going to be like specifically useful for odd theming and odd characters like that. And I happen to notice in that kit, there is actually a dress in there that very, very heavily reminds me of Cinderella's dress that she wears when she's living in Tremaine Manor. It is almost so close to it, it's shocking. And although Cinderella does not exist in the save and she is not going into Ravenwood, for any of you that are wondering why I'm bringing her up, I have thought of her when I saw that dress, so that might be a potential weird random pack that would specifically work for her in the future. I'll have to see and like actually put it on her and see what it would look like. Just to add a little bit of something fun and the diversity to the household, I decided I did want to add the guard dog that is shown in the movie. Now, I was really kind of trying to figure out what type of dog breed this is. I'm usually pretty good about dog breeds, but I could not place this one. And I think it's because he's very likely to be some kind of a mixed breed. But when I kept looking at him, I thought to myself, he looks a lot like Tramp from Lady and the Tramp. And again, I just couldn't like remember what breed that was. So I Googled what Tramp is. And Tramp is supposed to be possibly a mixed breed of Terrier and Schnauzer or Shepherd. And that's totally spot on. Once I was given that information, I used the breeding system in the game to put the 2 different breeds in. I picked a terrier and a schnauzer, and I just kept hitting randomize until I got a taller, large breed dog that had more features of the schnauzer, but was a big schnauzer. And that's really what he looked like. And you'll probably, I would love name suggestions, by the way, for this dog, because I have no idea what to name him. You probably won't randomly recognize him as he's running around the Disney save, and he's a little bit of an odd random choice, but I love a good dog at the end of the day. And not that he's a good dog, he's actually an aggressive, like very vocal, monstrous kind of dog, but I love the idea of having something else to focus on and something else to do inside this household. He is technically owned by Henchman number 3, and it's a shame that the game will not let you indicate, even inside of a household, who is the actual owner of the animal, because I feel like that dynamic specifically like is really important. And there are some times where I include a dog or a cat inside of a household, but it's really only for one character, and I would like the bond and the relationship with those two to be specific and not have the other characters really catering to the dog or getting to know the dog, because I think the other henchmen would largely find the dog to be an annoyance and not interact with it. But since he lives in the household and the game won't let me indicate that he belongs to that particular henchman, he's just kind of the household dog. So it's a little bit of a shame that they don't have a way for you to like indicate that specifically. Moving on to, and hopefully I'm not butchering names here because I've listened to them a few times. This is Fflewddur Fflam, I believe. He is the bard that Taran and Eilonwy run into towards the end of the film, middle-ish end of the film. They pick him up in Horn King's castle. He happens to be being brought in captive as they are trying to escape and leave, and so he gets caught up in escaping as well and gets very lucky. We don't know too much about him or what he was doing or his journeys before that point. It is obviously a pretty probable case that Horn King randomly takes people prisoner all the time for all sorts of reasons. That would not be out of the question at all. Bards are sometimes depicted as having some sort of magic, although Fflewddur definitely isn't in the film. So maybe he wants him for entertainment, whatever it may be. Maybe Creeper or one of the henchmen was out running around town and they heard Fflewddur and he was very annoying to them, and they decided he's under arrest and they were going to bring him back to the castle. Regardless, he's a part of the squad and he is currently being held captive at Horn King's castle, and it's your job to go and save him because he's definitely not saving himself. He's a little bit of a bumbling kind of idiot, I'm so sorry to say. And he was a tricky one to bring into CreativeSim because he has a super stylized Disney face with extremely exaggerated specific features that are just so hard to recreate. I would put him in the LeFou category, where the face is just so bold and this big nose and these huge, perfectly round eyes. It's a little bit tough of a translation, but I think I did the best that I can with the game parameters. And he does turn out pretty good. He looks like him at least a little bit, and the hat helps a lot. That hat I have never gotten an opportunity to use, but it's in the game, and I'm so grateful for it at this point because it's exactly his hat. It's perfect for him. And at the end of the video, I saved her for last because I knew so many of you were going to be specifically looking for her. This is Princess Eilonwy. She is a teen in my version of the Disney save. I decided to go with that because, according to what most people believe, Taran is somewhere around the age of 13 to 14. The Black Cauldron is based off of a series of books, and in the books, Taran is 13, so they are teens, and him and Taran and Eilonwy have, I wouldn't go so far as to say a romance, but they are depicted as being like a Disney couple or a future Disney couple, and the movie ends with them sharing a kiss. So because the romance is depicted in some capacity, obviously I'm going to personally lean in the direction of making them teens. Now, The Sims physically makes teens look as old as young adults, which is the unfortunate aspect of it because she inevitably looks a little bit older than she is supposed to, as depicted in the movie. But at the end of the day, she probably is kind of around the right age. She's a new teen for the save file. We will take as many teens as we can get because we don't have a ton of them currently. And she was a blast to make. She turns out so great. I would be remiss not to mention that she ends up looking a little bit like Taylor Swift. I totally recognize that. It was a complete accident. I think it's the specific hair color and the bangs, and I was really, really big on making sure that I picked a hairstyle for her that has bangs because she does have them. And then I also wanted to give her a hairpiece or a headpiece of some kind. And thank goodness once again that they have given us hair accessories. And although I would have loved to have had something a little bit more thin and like a traditional headband that she wears, this will definitely work in place of that for now. Something really interesting that I noticed when I was making these Black Cauldron characters, now that we have the options for all of these new eyes, at the very end of the eye options, they have a couple of new choices, and they are just normal human looking eyes, but the pupils are just a little bit bigger than the traditional everyday game color options that they let us pick. So they come across a little bit more cartoony. And I had picked a couple of them for some of the Henchmen characters that had weird colored eyes and like yellow colored eyes and things like that. So I wasn't going to use them, but because all of the other characters for the Black Cauldron also got those eyes, I went ahead and gave them to Eilonwy as well. And she just looks so good with them. They are really cool. I wish they came in more color options. I'm going to try not to use them all the time because I don't think you have even like a brown choice, which is obviously going to come up with quite a few characters, but they are like a superior version of the traditional eye colors in game. And it was really, really cool to have something new to use that's so pretty and so well done. And with all of that, we have the characters for Horn King's Castle. I hope you guys enjoyed all of them. Let me know who your favorite was down in the comment section below. The next thing you can expect to see from me is going to be Taryn's cottage from the Black Cauldron. I hope you're excited for that. If you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.